So let's talk strategy a bit, right? So AoE's been like really good for a while, you know, it's been kind of accepted. For a while, we had, you know, midline weapons that controlled up in space, and we had midline weapons that hit around corners. And for like a while, it's been clear that it's been better. And I think the main thing to solidify that has been Bucket and S-Blast. Now, Bucket in range was good back in the day, you know, but it was never the best option. It was a little bit flawed. The toolkits made retake tough. Range's special weapons weren't the best. And mainly, Squeezer and Stamper were just capable of bullying them back in the day when they were a little stronger. But S-Blast is a different story. You got a Burst Bomb and a Booyah Bomb. You got the perfect kit you could ask for. And Burst and Booyah were a disgusting combo. Because really, one of the only answers to these kind of weapons is their low DPS. I mean, the DPS on this thing is like, you know, it leaves a lot to be desired. And Bucket is better, but you know, it's not that much better. Things like splash walls, big bubblers, etc. will be pretty tricky. Luckily, we now have two AoE weapons that have answers to those things with its Booyah Bomb and Slosher's Tri-Strike. This gave them help with retake, it gave them help with painting, it gave them help with demolishing any HP special that could be a problem for them. It seemed to be a direct answer to all of that. But now, I think things have changed a little bit. We've been seeing a little bit of developments in 11.0, and part of it is definitely that the AoE options have gotten weaker. But I think the main strategies that have risen to kind of counterplay them are a little bit interesting. And I've talked a bit about like shorter range weapons doing a bit better, like Roller, you know, even that's more niche, but like Carbon won an area cup. We have a Tri-Sloshers being used more, we got Blaster being, you know, a little bit broken, stuff like that. But I don't think those weapons tell the full story. To talk about what I think has been happening a little bit more, I want to talk about the large success of a weapon we don't really see much in the Western scene yet. It'll happen eventually if this keeps going without a nerf, though, and that's VAC 96. This is pretty much undisputed the best support in the game right now, in my eyes. The usage rate is insane, but the weapon also seems to be just perfectly situated for this weapon. For the meta, I mean. Sprinkler, not really, you know, it's just kind of here, gets you more vacuum, and we'll talk about vacuum, but this main weapon is pretty solid for a support. It's not as mobile as other options, but what it does have is range. It's not going to get bullied by a lot of these other options. It's capable of taking alright fights, both against other midlines, like, you know, S-Blast or Bucket, for instance, but also against all these new short-range slaying options. It can keep its distance from things like Blasters and Tri-Sloshers, while still putting an ample amount of pain on the floor, you know? It works pretty well with about anything. And 60 damage, which, you know, in the fighting slot, 60 damage isn't really that great, you know? It doesn't really work with a lot of options. In the support slot? It does 60 in the support slot? Are you kidding me? That's awesome. Suddenly, that's not a big problem anymore. But Ink Vacuum is a whole other thing. Obviously, the output on them is a huge part of this, and, you know, the output on anything is a lot. But also, Ink Vacuum is pretty good at tanking Booyah. And it's even pretty alright at dealing with Strike. It's a sustain tool that also isn't completely useless on retake. Now, losing your main weapon can be a bit of a problem on retake, but the fact that you can protect teammates while they walk forward and you have enough, you know, tanking power since the vacuum buff to, like, actually use it, has made retakes a lot easier for a lot of weapons that normally wouldn't be able to. Things like Roller, or Tri-Slosher, or Blaster, or, like, mostly anything really short range, especially. These shorter range guns that normally wouldn't have a way to close the gap against a Bucket and an S-Blast and a Pen all edge camping them. And, you know, Pen sitting away and just working with all of them. This provides a unique answer. We're going to get in close range because of the vacuum, and you can either back all the way up and give all that space to us, or you're gonna lose it. Traditional sustain options can still stack with this, like Bubble, for instance, but it's not typically common. Instead, what I would describe as supplementing this into a full-on sustain playstyle are weapons that just keep the other team away in neutral. Weapons like E-Leader that can control open sightlines. Bow that has the ink efficiency to constantly spray people away from it. Options like Rollers that can shark around and threaten you if you try to get greedy against them. Tri-Slosher that can prevent you from rushing it down. And poke Fizzy Bombs if it gets its way. We've seen the rise of a lot of other weapons that I think naturally stall with Sustain. The specials just aren't always going to be active, and they always need a good bit of setup to use something like an Ink Vac or a Bubble. You know, maybe some exception with Booyah, but that can't protect multiple people, you know? So, this is the natural answer. Once you get set up with your frequent Ink Vac spam or other specials, you set up a ton of weapons that are annoying to deal with. And there is counterplay to getting rid of these weapons. This isn't the point I'm getting at. But by stacking multiple on top of each other, you have to play a lot of little, let's call them mini-games at the same time. You have to play Don't Die to the Sharking Roller or Tri-Slosher. Don't peek the leader in open sightlines. And don't wait too long or else the 96 is going to get another ink vacuum and rush you down. If it sounds like this is a little bit annoying, it kind of is. But it's also really annoying that, hey, the corners aren't safe. If you peek them, you will get shot. If you stand in the open, the S-Blast could still direct or burst combo you. By the way, every time they retake, they are going to Booyah Strike the zone, and it will flip if they have to. They can also use that to sustain, and there's a billion burst bombs, and there's a billion death combos. You get the point. Pretty much every comp is going to be at least a little bit annoying, and while AoEs has been overtuned for a bit, it's hard to say if this is as well. It probably is, but so much of this comp, though, seems to revolve heavily on 96. Because 96 really seems to be the centerpiece. Vacuum is what allows these weapons to get in close range, and the insane special output is what allows these comps to stall for long enough, because if just given a little bit more time, it's not too hard for top teams to play the roller game, or the leader game, or even other stuff, you know, just the normal counterplay. If you have time to deal with it, it's easier. But VAC 96 puts a constant timer on everything you want to do, because if you do not do what you need fast enough, this weapon will get special faster than pretty much anything else relevant to the game. And that's a scary threat. So scary, in fact, that 96 is played with more normal pen stuff as well. It doesn't have to be run with this heavy sustain stuff, and it still works. But I do think it's at least kind of interesting that there is sort of an alternate playstyle emerging here, or multiple of them. The traditional double midline AoE is still standing. Short-range weapons and running a mid-range support like 96 or Forge alongside them is good. And now you also can spec into it heavy enough to play to sustain. Having harder retakes, but in exchange having incredibly threatening holds with a lot of weapons that naturally have game plans that cover each other, and make it incredibly difficult to counterpick that team. The balance of all of that is a whole other thing that has to be tweaked. I'm sure there's a lot of adjustments that could be done. But this definitely incentivizes a lot of the buffs that I think already are kind of needed. Buff a lot of the weaker midline options. In general, this would be things that control open sightlines like Splatanas or Squeezer. Or more open sight, or more mobile weapons, like dualies, like most of them, you know, especially Squelchers or Dowser dualies. Having options that could punish these things. Sword is probably the main answer, because it kind of deals with a lot of these things at once. Synergizes with mobile weapons. Takes care of the dreaded ink vacuum and big bubblers by giving an option to deal with them. And also, if good enough, could force enough gameplay in open sightlines to deal with AoE. I didn't mean this to turn into another, hey, we should really buff sword type video, but I guess it kind of turned into that. But I more just wanted to talk about that I do think sustained comps are kind of becoming a bit of their own thing. And as the meta develops, it's going to be interesting to see where these kind of things go. The next balance patch really does have a lot it could potentially do, due to how many things are just emerging and developing right now. The only thing I can really say for sure when it comes to balance changes, though, VAC 96 might be target number 1. At least when it comes to competitive. Obviously in solo heavy is going insane, but when it comes to comp, this thing's special output is probably the number 1 problem that's going to lead to annoying comps, whether they are the things we are used to or the new things rising up against it. While I think Vacuum is very interesting, this is one case where the output's probably too much. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. Just a little ramble on Sustain. See ya.